Well, hello there. How is everyone? I hope you're all well on this fantastic, stupendous Sunday. You're looking absolutely amazing. And I'm going to get straight into the meat and potatoes while my voice is able to continue. In the background, I am downloading documents. We've got a few documents that we're going to be going over live. So keep your eyes peeled. Once they are all downloaded and ready and my voice is back to normal, I will go live and we'll go over them together. But look, I wanted to do this video because I've seen some initial reactions to some of these documents, and primarily speaking about the ever-changing stories of the surviving roommates. And I know what people are going to say. They're going to say in the comments, victim blaming, you're carrying on and you're attacking these individuals. This isn't about fucking victim blaming. This ain't victim blaming at all. And I'll tell you why it's not victim blaming. Because we have a situation where we have some individuals who were butchered to death in a house. Now, at the moment, we've got an individual who has pleaded guilty to that crime. And some people accept that undisputedly. They're just going to say that, yeah, he's said that he did it. That's it. That's all we need to know. That is all we need to know. The fact that the Innocence Project exists, the fact that we have evidence of multiple cases over the last few decades where people have pled guilty to murder and been sentenced to decades of their life in order to avoid the death penalty, that does not matter. And some people are just happy that they got to the conclusion that they had deemed was always going to be the conclusion. And look, I'm not saying you're wrong, but what I'm saying is I'm not convinced. And I'll tell you why I'm not convinced. It is because of things like this. I mentioned in video 1 earlier today how Bill Thompson had come out. He is the lead prosecutor in this case. And he would come out at the back end of sentencing and make it seem like his case was relatively weak, that there was no real communication between Brian Koberger and the victims, like what people are pushing out on social media, saying that he was messaging them on social media. There was no connection. We've got stories that contradict the Mad Greek. On one hand, we've got the Mad Greek saying Brian Koberger had never been in there. We've then got reports saying that he had been in there. But the issue that I have with the surviving roommates is that you've now got one who was making coin, serious money, like to the tune of around $106,000, $107,000, $107,000 plus, because of going into the sentencing hearing and crying. Went into the sentencing hearing and crying. And look, I know people are going to turn around and say, well, how dare you say that this, or pretend that you know what this individual's gone through. And look, I don't know what she's gone through. And I'll tell you why I don't know what she's gone through, because the story has changed so many times that I'm beginning to wonder which story is true, which story is real. And this may not even be on the surviving roommates. This may be that law enforcement manipulated these two individuals. Now, let's not forget that these two individuals were in the house together when this heinous crime happened. And you've got one who seemingly, as aforementioned, making coin, and apparently part of that is because they have to relocate. Why do you need to relocate if you've already come out of the area where this happened? You don't really come from this area in the first place. You then, after the murders, you look happy, you're out and about and doing normal kind of teenagery things or young adult things, getting tattoos done and yada, yada, yada. But 2.5 years later, you go and do this performance, and I call it a performance, and I mean it with all due respect, because the story that we're being told has changed so many times that I just don't know who to believe anymore. But, and I've said this more than once, and that is that Dylan Morton and Bethany Funk should have been showing some degree of solidarity, but we're supposed to believe that Bethany Funk didn't turn up because she had toothache, so she didn't want to show any solidarity to the person who she survived the worst ordeal that she would have ever gone through in her entire life. off the back end of us being told by the defense counsel at some stage that she had potentially exculpatory evidence. And when you look at the documentation, it shows a disjoint between these two individuals, and all it would take is for one of them to say something that contradicts the other. And then on top of that, we have a situation with the bushy eyebrows, where these individuals, Dylan Mortensen, for instance, had been interviewed no less than 6 times, and bushy eyebrows had not been brought up in the first 3 interviews. She had mentioned everything else from fucking big nose to what he was carrying. The only thing, and bearing in mind, she would have had to have stared this individual straight in the fucking eyes. She did not mention bushy eyebrows. But Judge fucking Hitler, he turns around and says that she's a credible witness because her story remained consistent all the way throughout. So I call Hitler out and say, well, hold on a second, because there's only one of 2 things happening here. And that is that you were either well aware of the documentation, you had read it and then you lied, or you weren't interested enough to actually read the documentation, so you made an assumption based on what you were being told, which is what a vast majority of you people in the community do. You listen to your favorite creators or the overall feeling of the comments that you're surrounded by, and you jump on board with them without doing your own fucking homework, without reading the docs yourself, and use a critical mind to understand that these stories are consistently changing. And one thing that we know, well, most of us know, is that the truth never changes. If you are telling the truth all the way through, then there is no need for the story to change. And look, I'm not saying that Dylan Mortensen and Bethany Funk lied, but what I am saying is there are multiple variations of their story. And that would appear that someone is lying, or at the very least, someone is manipulating a story that came from ground zero. The story right at the center of this situation. And if these stories that happened right at the center of this crime, on the actual night that it happened, the hours that it happened, that can be manipulated, that can be changed, that can be boxed up and palmed off out to people to feel a certain way, see a certain thing, emphasize certain elements that later on become not true, like Xana Canodal's door being shut, then it's open, then you actually hear that she's seen on the floor, and all of these things. You have to consider what else can be lied and manipulated, because there are so many things around this case that are being changed, that are being manipulated. So why do these stories keep changing if what we're being told is consistently the truth? There is nothing that is wrong. That's all I'm asking people to do. Explain to me why these stories are changing. Why are there so many questions that exist around this case? Why would Judge Hitler claim that Dylan Mortensen had said bushy eyebrows so that could be used as an identifying factor had this have gone to trial, when he should have known full well that she had not said that consistently through interviewing? This was manipulation. This was a judge who was either manipulated, or he trusted the prosecution and allowed them to manipulate him, or he knew what was going on and he was also manipulating, or was going to allow manipulation of the jury inside that court. That's how this looks. Tell me I'm wrong. Love you all. Mwah.